We're back for round 2 of grinder cleaning. In this one, I'm going to be cleaning the Baratza Encore. I'm going to show you how to take this guy apart and do a little bit of heavy-duty cleaning. I've got a grinder cleaning brush this time. You could just as easily use a toothbrush. And then, of course, we're going to be using the Urnex grinds. So you can get a closer look of this here. You can just search for this on Amazon, and I'll also link to this below in the video. It's going to be very similar to the other video, but again, instead we're using the Baratza Encore grinder. So this is what you do. And we gotta take the top off to make this easier. Now we need to take out the hopper. And what we're gonna do is turn it counterclockwise so that we need to turn it all the way to this little arrow here. It's pretty straightforward. And you can hear it hit the end there, and now it's gonna come loose when we put this down. You might need to fiddle with this a little bit because right now it's not coming out. I just had to shift it slightly, and there we go. Don't be too rough with it. Here's the inside of our Encore grinder. Now for this part, I could just go wash this with soap and water. That's probably what I'm gonna do. Really simple. But there is some, you can see coffee oils and chaff and grounds and stuff that would be good to clean up. See all that? That needs to go. That's what gets built up in your grinder. And the same thing with this guy. I'm just gonna take that over to the sink and wash all that stuff off. Okay, now I've zoomed in a bit more here and dialed up the lighting so you can hopefully see what's going on. Now you can of course see the 2 burrs. The Encore is a conical burr grinder, just like most of the ones that you're gonna run across, unless you're paying a lot more money. And we've got some grounds there that need to come out and all this sort of thing. Now, you want to be very careful. If you just take off what I just showed you, this gasket and the top, and then you try to knock the grounds out, this part could come flying out because this just sits in here. But what we're going to do here is we're going to be making really a full clean on this because A, my grinder's dirty, and B, that's what I want to show you. So we are going to take this out intentionally. Be very careful with this piece because it's got some plastic tabs. You don't want to break anything. When this is sitting in here properly, it'll have this much movement and no more. This needs to be able to lock in place basically, and it's got a very specific spot where it does that. I always like to remember, mine has this red tab on it. I'm not sure if all Baratza Encore grinders do, but I always try to remember that that one is in this spot relative to the grinder, just to help me put it back in place. But we're just gonna lift this straight out. And this is the outer burr. As you can see, I have quite a bit of grounds kind of caked in there, and I wanna clean all that off. So a lot of that, like this stuff here, on the burrs, if you just run the grinds through, most of this will get cleaned up, and that's fine. But the reason I'm taking it apart now is because of this outside business. And I'm not being too rough with this, but you can see that there's quite a bit to remove. So I'm just gonna go around and do that. And this is where, like I said, a toothbrush would be perfectly fine. Pardon my framing. But a toothbrush would work well. But you need something that can kind of get in there. Not too rough, but as you can see, it can kind of get down in there as well. And this part, like running grinds through your grinder, does a great job cleaning the burrs, but it's not ever going to clean this part because this is just like the outside of the inside. I mean, very careful not to disturb this gasket too much. It does have some wiggle room. Okay, that's a significant improvement. You probably didn't even notice that there was a gasket there when I first showed this to you. All right, now, just for, since we're here, I'm going to give this a good wipe too. Okay. Again, with these inner burrs, I'm not trying to scrub this stuff clean because the grinds are going to go through and take care of this part in here. But since we're at it, that's really easy to do. One thing I've noticed is that sometimes around this sort of rim you can get caking, but it looks like I haven't had that problem. It looks like it came and caked around the outer edge here, which we've mostly done. I've got some stuck up in here. I'm not too worried about that. If you want to be completely thorough, then you probably want to like maybe get yourself a can of air to help get all of this stuff out. But for the sake of brevity and showing you as much as possible without being too crazy, we're going to call that pretty good. I got rid of all the caked stuff. Now I'm going to set this aside again. Careful with how you handle this. You don't want to break any of these plastic tabs. Okay, now we're on to here, and all this stuff, like you can see in here I have, again, the grinds are going to take care of the interior here, but I have all this stuff on the exterior. So what I'm going to do first is just kind of try to make sure it's as loose as possible, and then I'm going to try to knock out as much as I can. This is a good situation where a can of air would be really helpful, but at this point, there's just going to be some of this stuff on the outside. Don't think I'm going to be able to get to with the tools I have. But this will still be a very significant improvement over what we had. Like I said, if you want to be completely and utterly thorough, a can of air will be useful. Okay, now there's one thing I'm noticing here, which I am going to address, and you see that line? There's that ring, that dark ring. That is actually possibly the opposite side of the ring that was here, in which case the grinds might not actually get to it. So I'm going to try to use the brush here. If you don't have, like if your toothbrush is not fitting in here, I'd be very careful about using Q-tips, and the reason is because the cotton could easily come out, and I don't think that's going to be a really good thing. So I'm just going to keep trying to go through here with this and get rid of this whole caked ring that's come out. Pardon my framing, it's a little awkward doing this. Now, I could probably unscrew this and remove this burr. I really do not want to do that. As much as I can, I try not to fiddle with things that are of a delicate nature with these grinders. Could easily run into problems with it not grinding right if you take too much apart, but at a certain point that might be necessary. But I've had this grinder for quite a while, and this is the first time, honestly, that I'm going to this extent with it. So if you feel comfortable taking it apart, you know, maybe once a year. I don't like taking it apart any more than I already have, though. I'm gonna just try to, one more pass through, knocking as much out. I think the only way I would get that dust is if I had a can of air. So since I don't, that's gonna have to be, it's gonna have to be as good as we do. The burrs there will get clean with the grinds. That's the extent of the cleaning now. And again, this is not taking me that long. Like a super duper heavy duty taking it apart cleaning, I maybe have to do sometime. Okay, I just kind of casually slid this back in here. This only fits in one spot. If you try to put it in wrong, you'll see that it doesn't work. But it has one spot where it slots in. That's what you want to do. And again, mine has a red tab, so I'm able to kind of track where that spot is. Okay, now we're back. I did a couple things off camera. I went ahead and I cleaned this stuff up. With this rubber gasket, I just used water and, well, my hands to get everything off. Cleaned pretty straightforward. This I did use soap and water just to get it nice and clean, shiny, get off all those coffee oils. And then I also cleaned the hopper, which I didn't show you on the camera before. So I'm going to show you really quick here. First off, the hopper cleans just like this guy. Inside here, so the chute for the Encore is pretty direct from here straight into the hopper. So there's not much space for stuff to collect, and nothing much collects here. You do get, it's a little hard to see because I did kind of wipe it out a little bit, but you can kind of see on the bottom here, you do get grinds, just kind of chaff and stuff that sticks. So the only way you're really going to clean one of these in totality is really some canned air and wiping it down liberally with a cloth. So one last thing, when you're putting this all back together, you want to be absolutely 100% sure that all of this stuff is completely dry. You do not want moisture getting into your grinder there. So we're going to put this back together, and then we're going to be running the grinds through. All right, so this, just for your reference, little notches here fit with the notches on the thing, and just double checking this is in its spot. So that's about as much as it should move. And then this just fits snugly in there. Shouldn't move around much at all. I mean, obviously the rubber will, but it's snug in its position. Okay, now the hopper, and just like when we started off, that's our grind size marker, and to put it back together, we're going to line it up with that. Okay, so it just kind of fits right in there, and I do need to press down slightly and then give it a turn. And now we're good. Back where we started. All right, next step is the grinds. And I'm gonna quickly plug in the grinder. I forgot to mention at the beginning, make sure your grinder is not plugged in while you're doing all that stuff. Okay, now we're good. Just gonna make sure it's operating properly. Seems to spin, no problems, that's good. Grinds is very straightforward. I'm just gonna put in the recommended amount straight into here and run it through. I could measure out with the grams, but I'm just gonna measure with a cap. That's also an option. And this is where we're at, so 1 capful. And that's what the stuff looks like. A little bright here, but it's just these tablets that are made of mostly wood pulp and cereals. So it's designed to soak up all the coffee oils, get them off the blades, the burrs, and get them out the other side. So in we go. All right, and that's what happens. Okay, so I just went and emptied that out just into the trash, and you can kind of see that there's this dust that's left, and that's just what I want to show you. So first off, the grinds is completely food safe. You don't have to worry about this stuff. I just want to show you what it looks like, so when you see this in here, you're not startled. And you can see it in here as well. This is not going to be a problem. And in fact, as far as I can tell, it really has no impact on the coffee brewing. Although, if you like have a smell of this stuff, it'll smell like paper. If you're really getting into the tasting of coffee, it could have an impact, and what you would want to do is just run, a few batches through before you get into like the really good stuff. And you'll see, this isn't normally what you do. I'm just taking this apart to show you that the grinds just kind of stick around a little bit. But after you run a batch of coffee through, it's not going to be there anymore. But you can see how clean the grinder is now. Like, no coffee oils. And that is cleaning your grinder. So again, once you got to that point, run a batch or two through, or don't worry about it, either way, and you're good to go. If you have any questions, this has been part 2 of cleaning your grinder. I'll link to part 1 and the grinds. This is also cleaning the Baratza Encore. Again, if you have any questions, leave your comment below in chat. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next one.